sometimes watching that video makes me a little emotional right before I get up. That's my life, and I just want to tell you a little bit about some of the details and then just reiterate what a mighty God we serve and some things that He's done in my life with some of the opportunities I've been given and the family that I now have. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Things were pretty normal to me. My best friend, my brother Michael, at this time I was 5 and he was 8. We did everything together. He let me tag along everywhere we go, and he's just the best friend I could have. And my parents were going through some hard times. They were getting separated. They were actually going through a divorce. They married young, and my dad was very violent. He was an alcoholic. He did different drugs, but for the most part, he drank a lot, and he was very physical, very abusive. There were several times that my mom took all of us to go live in a battered women's shelter because it got so bad that she just couldn't take it anymore. But as a lot of women do in cases of domestic violence, she kept taking him back, thinking that he would change. We had family members that would beg my mom not to take him back. I think she was scared to be on her own with us kids, so she kept giving him another chance. That night, my dad came over. He begged my mom to give him another chance, and we were used to seeing fights. That's kind of how I thought relationships were. The fight would end with someone getting hurt, and so it wasn't new to me and my brother. So we went off to bed. My parents started arguing. They argued well into the night. The fight got heated, and it ended up in the bedroom. It would be the last time my dad laid his hands on my mom, but he started to choke her. And he ended by throwing her on a bed and suffocating her with a pillow. And then he went to his closet, grabbed his .38, came into our room. We didn't share rooms, but for some reason that night, me and my brother were sleeping in the same room. Stuck the gun point blank to the back of my brother's head and pulled the trigger. Turned to the other side of the room, stuck the gun right here, and pulled the trigger. But he eventually went to the living room, sat in his chair, and took his own life. They estimated about 18 hours before we were discovered. What happened is my aunt and my mother work at the same place. And then when she didn't show up for work, my aunt got concerned and eventually drove over to our house. She was immediately worried because she saw both cars were in the driveway, and she had already been calling several times. She went to the front door. Of course, there was no answer. She went around the back. The curtains were open, so she could see my dad in the living room, and she flipped out and called the police. The paramedics came. They looked around. They cased the scene. It had been about 18 hours since this had happened. They pronounced all of us dead. And they started doing their reports. They started packing up to leave. Everything's, there's nothing else to see. Everything's over. One officer reported that rigor mortis already set in on my body. So as one of the paramedics was writing his report, and right as he was leaving, he had noticed that my right arm moved a little bit. We have the footage on the internet, and you can see it. To me, when I first saw it, it almost looks fake, but it shows the guy coming out. We have one alive in here, and he's saying it to anybody that's still around, because most people had already left. And then on the news footage, you can see that lady right there. She just didn't know what to do. She didn't put me in a stretcher. She just picked me up and ran. They didn't know what to do. Everybody was so shocked that I was still alive. They flew me to the hospital. I think the surgery was about 8 hours. My grandparents, got there about the same time I did. And the surgeon came out and he said, "Hey, I don't know what we're going to do, but if we do the surgery, there's a good chance he might die during the surgery. But if we don't do the surgery, he's going to die pretty quickly." See, they were just so shocked because my dad didn't miss. The bullet went in right here behind my left ear. It shattered my cerebellum. The bullet shattered, and it exited behind my right ear. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know why I was still alive, laying in my own pool of blood for about 18 hours. So the surgery went well. After the surgery was over, I remember waking up, just laying there. I remember it like it was yesterday. The room, or the doorway to the room, was at an angle to the right side, and people were flooding in from the neighborhood, from my grandparents' church, wanting to see how I was doing, bringing flowers, gifts, and I didn't care. My only goal was I was staring at that doorway. I was staring through these people because I was looking for my mom. I knew that if I saw my mom, that everything would be okay. Because I'm laying here, I have no strength, I can't talk to ask any questions, and I don't know what's going on. I woke up in this hospital bed, bandaged up, and my grandparents are sitting over here to the right, and I don't know what is going on. It's killing me inside. And I'm staring, looking for my mother to walk through that door, and she never did. And that's when I realized I was by myself. In the back of my mind, I knew that my grandparents would be there to take care of me. But it wasn't the same, I wanted my mom. I wanted my brother to walk through that door to tell me that it's going to be all right. And it never happened. And it just slowly killed me inside. My grandparents got guardianship of me, and the state told them that I can't handle this kind of information. I'm too young. I'm 5 years old. That's too much information for me. So for the longest time, I was led to believe that I was in a car accident, and I was the only one that survived. And I was already a shy, timid kid from my dad being so abusive, but I was fine with that. I didn't ask any more questions. My grandparents were scared to give me too much information, so that was kind of where it was left. And I just tried to deal with the fact that I survived a car accident. They got me back in school. They made me switch schools because my brother was pretty popular. So I moved across town to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And that's when it started. I just had to try to figure things out on my own because I felt so alone. First day of kindergarten, I had to go in. It was the middle of the year. I have all these eyes on me, and I'm walking in to Miss Jackson's kindergarten class, and all these people are staring at me, trying to figure out, why I'm here in the middle of the year. And I realized I was by myself. I had to figure this out by myself, and I was so young, so it was so hard to process all the emotions that I was going through, the fear, the abandonment, just missing my family. As I got a little older, I started becoming more recluse. I was that kid that came home from school and just went straight to my room, came out for dinner, and that's about it. I wanted each day to be over. I wanted the day to end because I knew that I wasn't happy, that I was miserable. And, it was such a shame that I was so young to feel that way. And eventually, as I got a little older, it was depression and suicidal because I didn't know what was going on. And, kids are smart, so I eventually started figuring out some details from extended family and people that were bitter about certain things that happened. And so I started figuring things out. I'd go get haircuts as I got a little older, and the person cutting my hair would want to know why I got all these scars all over my head. It was kind of weird because they would ask me about the scars, and I would shrug my shoulders. I don't know. Eventually, I kind of got tired of that, so I used that as my opportunity to be creative, and I just make stories up, about falling and just random things. That was my chance to, be creative. So I started trying to pick up details from various family members, but something was missing. And eventually, I started getting in more trouble at school because I wanted to be that kid that everybody liked. I wanted to have friends. If there was a prank to be pulled, if there was someone that needed to be made fun of, I would do that just so I could get a laugh and maybe feel like I had more friends. It was a fake, fake friendships, but I still felt better. I felt like people liked me. And when I was 12 years old, my grandparents said, okay, this is enough. We've got to do something. So they took, I had basically grown up in counseling, but it never really helped. I never really listened. I never really took to it like I should have because I didn't want any help from a stranger, someone that didn't know about me, and I felt they didn't care about me. Because kind of what I had learned growing up is that people really don't care. When somebody walks by you and says, how are you doing? They really don't care. They want you to say okay so they can keep going. They don't say how are you doing. They don't want you to stop and tell them about your mortgage or about your brother doing this. They're just trying to be nice. And this is something no one ever really told me that. I just kind of thought that of people. And it wasn't until I got older until I realized that's not true about everybody. But they took me to a counselor at 12, and it was one that went to our church, so I was a little bit familiar with him. But I knew something was wrong, because usually when I went to the counselor, or the therapist, or whatever you want to call it, I went by myself. But this time my grandma and my grandpa went. They walked me up, and I knew something was weird. Maybe I thought it was about school or something, so they sat me down, and they said, Chris, we probably waited too long to tell you this, but we figure it's time to tell you about your life.